Volcanoes are scary, but they're also kind of necessary. A few thousand years ago, one erupted in what is now Italy and covered an entire Roman city in ash. We know that place. Today it's called Pompeii, and everybody knows about how super sad and super stinky it was when it got buried by a volcano. But here's the thing. Volcanoes don't just shape the landscape, they can shape civilizations too. And while some volcanoes do end up killing tons of people, others have had way more subtle effects on human history. Some helped our ancestors migrate across continents, and others inspired major innovations from early agriculture to medieval castles. These are the stories of 5 volcanoes that shaped the course of human civilization. First up, we have Mount Vesuvius, which you may have heard is the volcano that destroyed Pompeii. But the story starts long before the destruction. Vesuvius is actually 2 slightly different volcanoes that merged at some point in the past. One of those was Mount Somma, and it blew its top around 2500 BCE, leaving behind a massive crater and covering nearby settlements in ash. It's possible that this eruption is what led to the decline of the nearby city of Pompeii's culture, but there were still people living in the area 2,000 years later when Vesuvius struck again, this time taking out Pompeii, Herculaneum and Stabiae. These cities were all prosperous Roman settlements with diverse populations of Romans, freed slaves, and people who had been conquered and brought to the area. But because Vesuvius hadn't blown its lid in over 1,000 years, the locals didn't think much of it. They just figured that a little bit of smoke meant that the volcano was just fine. The small town of Pompeii was close enough to Vesuvius that the locals could see the smoke coming out of its crater. But even though they could see that smoke, they didn't think it was dangerous. So they kept building on top of the ash and pumice left behind by previous eruptions. By the time Vesuvius erupted again, the townspeople had built their homes right next to dangerous volcanic vents. You can still explore these sites today. So, if you want to visit a real-life zombie apocalypse, you know where to go. But let's be honest, the destruction of Pompeii wasn't the worst thing that a volcano did to humans. Thousands of years before Pompeii was raised to meet the gods, humans were trying to make it across the Bering Strait. Back then, the land bridge connecting Siberia to North America was completely underwater. But the waters weren't deep enough to stop our ancestors from walking across. So some brave seafarers set off to find new lands. That journey would have been absolutely miserable since they were crossing frozen tundra full of ice and snow, not to mention dangerous animals. But it looks like Mother Nature wanted to give them a warm welcome, because about 16,000 years ago, a volcano erupted near what we now call Kodiak Island, Alaska. The Pavlov volcano shot hot ash and rock into the air and spewed lava that cut through the ice. In fact, it caused so much damage that the surrounding glaciers started melting. All that new liquid water combined with the volcano's lava to form new land, making the trip across the Bering Strait shorter and safer. As a result, humans began migrating to North America around 14,500 years ago and eventually spread out all across the continent. It's possible that without Pavlova's eruption, humans wouldn't have been able to leave Siberia, and we might not have ended up here at all. But you don't have to look back thousands of years to see the effects of volcanoes on human migration. When Mount Pinatubo erupted in the Philippines in 1991, it sent a massive cloud of ash and gas 31 miles into the sky. That eruption was extremely dangerous for the people living nearby. More than 800 people died, and more than 100,000 had to leave their homes. But far away from the destruction, Pinatubo's eruption created ideal conditions for farming. See, Mount Pinatubo is a stratovolcano, meaning it has steep sides made mostly of ash and rock. This particular type of volcano forms from layers of lava and ash that pile up over time, and after they erupt, those layers can become fertile soil for plants. That's because volcanoes are usually rich in nutrients like potassium, phosphorus, and nitrogen, which happen to be great for growing things. This isn't true for all volcanoes, but for stratovolcanoes in particular, their eruptions can cause so much ash and debris to fall on the land around them that they actually end up creating a nutrient-rich layer of soil. And that's exactly what happened when Pinatubo erupted. 6 months after the eruption, the ash had settled and farmers saw that their crops were doing really well. So nowadays, people intentionally farm on the slopes of volcanoes because the soil is just so good at growing stuff. Of course, sometimes the soil is a little too good. For instance, Mount Vesuvius's many eruptions have made the entire region around it extremely fertile. But it's hard to farm there because, there are still active volcanoes in the area. People have farmed on the slopes of Mount Vesuvius for centuries, but they've had to deal with all the bad stuff that comes with living near an active volcano. Sometimes Vesuvius erupts, killing lots of people and destroying entire cities, but other times it does something called lava damming. Basically, flowing lava hits a river and builds up a wall of solid rock across the river's path. This creates a lake of liquid magma behind the wall, and that's not safe to live next to. And as if all that weren't complicated enough, Vesuvius can also cause lahars, which are basically volcanic mudslides. Lahars happen when volcanic debris mixes with water and flows down a river valley. And all of these extra challenges haven't stopped people from farming there. After Vesuvius erupted in 79 CE and destroyed Pompeii, people moved back into the area within 200 years, and today, wine made on Vesuvius's slopes is famous all over the world. Mount Vesuvius isn't the only volcano with tasty side effects. People have farmed on the slopes of Mount Etna in Italy since ancient times. And nowadays, Etna's slopes are home to vineyards and citrus farms. Meanwhile, Japan's Mount Asama is considered one of the most dangerous volcanoes in the country, but it's also made really fertile soil for rice paddies. Rice paddies are especially tricky to farm because they need to stay flooded during the growing season. And it turns out the loose, well-draining soil on the slopes of volcanoes is perfect for this because the soil holds enough nutrients without holding too much water. But Mount Asama is known for being temperamental, alternating between quiet periods and violent activity. And it's predicted to blow its lid sometime in the next 30 years. So maybe someday soon we'll have to add Mount Asama to the list of volcanoes that formed civilizations. In 1511, the Guatemalan village of Santa Maria de Jesus was a small but happy community of about 2,000 people. Then the nearby Santa Maria volcano gave the entire village a very rude awakening. The Santa Maria volcano had been quiet for 500 years, but on October it woke up and roared. Hot ash and rock fell on the village and killed hundreds of people. Entire houses turned to ash, and the ground rumbled for 4 days straight. Even worse, the ash blocked the sun, dropping temperatures in Guatemala by almost 9 degrees Fahrenheit. But despite all this, the Santa Maria volcano was a game-changer for the local people. Before the eruption, the area around the volcano was mostly covered in forest. But after everything was said and done, the volcano had formed a new lake and covered everything in nutrient-dense volcanic ash. Soon, people were moving into the area to take advantage of the brand-new farmlands. Within a century of the eruption, the population of the area went from 2,000 to 2,000 people, and today the area is home to dozens of villages and farms. Our relationship with volcanoes is complicated. They destroy whole cities and cover them in ash, but they can also help launch new civilizations. Volcanoes can ruin your day, but they can also give you great soil for farming. The key is to just stay alive long enough to enjoy the benefits. And speaking of surviving, that's what you're going to learn all about in the next SCI show video. Click on that link or head over to our website to watch that video, or get started on your own educational adventure today.